Make another little movie about some other Air Force memories and interesting flights. I wanted to tell you the one about a time when I made a takeoff as a co-pilot in U-tapau Thailand in support of F-4 Phantoms that were doing air-to-ground combat sorties. And I was over there beginning in June of 1973. I think this happened in July. One week when I was on standby as a co-pilot, I got a call to replace a co-pilot who was ill. So I show up at the squadron, get a briefing, shake hands, meet with everybody. It seemed like a really good crew, an experienced captain was flying. So we get out the airplane, start the engines, routine, taxi out to the end of the runway, routine. The procedure is that you calculate your takeoff weight, confirm that what your critical takeoff airspeeds are so that you can monitor your takeoff roll. But you calculate it assuming that you're going to have the water thrust augmentation during takeoff. 6,000 pounds of water that was injected into one of the last stages of exhaust as it went out the end of the jet engine, and therefore increased the mass flow rate, so it gave us thrust. It only lasted for 4 minutes, 5 minutes, I'm not sure about that, but it was a significant boost to help us take off when we were either heavy or when we were at high altitude or the temperature was hot and humid. Both left and right main gear have separate brakes. So he's standing on the brakes, I'm pushing the throttles up, waiting for the captain to say turn on the water. So he says water, and I do an inboard switch and an outboard switch. And the inboard switch failed to turn on. So I pulled the throttle back. The captain called the tower and told them that we were going to taxi to the first off-ramp and reassess the takeoff status. And they instructed us from the command post to dump the water, to dump the 6,000 pounds at the end of the runway, recalculate our takeoff weight, and if we found that we were too heavy without water, to stay there, push the throttles up, set the parking brake, and burn the jet fuel off until we had takeoff weight without water. Co-pilot's job is to calculate that takeoff weight. And I don't blame the captain because he didn't know me from a hole in the ground before today. So he's got his books out and he's calculating the takeoff weight. So I finished my calculation. He finished his calculations. We kind of looked over at each other. He looked over at me and he said, what have you got? I said, what have you got? Thank God we were really, really close. So he said, okay, push the throttles up, let's burn them off. And it took probably 15 minutes to burn that fuel, the weight of that fuel off till we thought we could go. And he said, you know what? Let's burn off a few more 1,000 pounds. So we called the tower and told them that we would be ready to go in about 10 minutes. So we gave ourselves what we felt was a pretty good safety margin. So we pull up to the end of the runway, got takeoff clearance again, and he said, listen, let's have another takeoff briefing. So the captain and I said, sure, I'd appreciate it. So one of the takeoff speeds is S1, and as the airspeed is increasing during the takeoff roll, you're looking for S1. S1 is the calculated airspeed for the runway conditions and the weight that if you have an engine failure, you still have plenty of runway and you can stop. S2 is that airspeed after S1 where you have enough airspeed to continue the takeoff. You don't have enough runway left to stop, but you have enough airspeed to take off with 3 engines. The captain, and I believe in his wisdom, he said, now don't panic. He said, when you call S1, S2, and rotate, he said, I'm not going to rotate. So he said, you know, the end of this runway, the runway lights are out in the Gulf of Siam, I believe it is. And he said, so when you call, rotate. I'm going to leave the yoke forward. I would like for you to call 2,000 feet of runway remaining, and then I'm going to go to neutral, and when you call 1,000 feet of remaining, I'm going to rotate. And I said, okay. We pushed the throttles up. He said, everybody ready? Yeah. He released his brakes, and we started going down the runway. Thunk, 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 thunk. We're going down the runway. He's got it there, and I'm pushed. He's got it up here like this, and I'm pushing the throttles up, all 4 throttles up. And I say, S1. He says, Roger, S1. Now it's going really fast. And I said, S2, S2, rotate. And he says, Roger, rotate. And he said that just so the little recorder box would know that we went through the procedure. And then I say, 2,000 feet remaining, Roger. And he comes back to the neutral position, and I say 1,000 feet of remaining, and I can see the lights out in the ocean, the landing lights, the approach lights out in the ocean, the little red lights, and the overrun is I don't know, 1,000 feet, and I said 1,000 feet remaining, and he comes back on that, and I said, and now we're going pretty fast. The nose comes up a little bit, nothing happens. The wheels don't come off the runway, and that's when you're a little. Like that. We're all going, nobody said a word, and soon it kind of wobbles a little bit. The wings just wobbles a little bit, and it comes off the ground. And as soon as the vertical velocity indicator, the VVI needle, showed a positive rate of climb, he said, gear up. And I reached up, got the gear up. Gear up. And we pushed the gear up like that. And we just kind of wallowed out over the ocean, probably no further than 10 feet. Gears comes up in, and then of course we start picking up airspeed. It doesn't settle, but nobody really said anything till we were cleaned up. The aircraft configuration was clean, and we were climbing out. And then it was, well, it's a good thing we burned off that last couple thousand pounds of fuel. And I looked over at the captain. I said, good call. And he says, yeah, I did that for my wife. So it was a very rewarding flight. The tanker, actually, when he heard that we were coming in, he departed his refueling area, and we went out to our refueling area. The SAMs from the Viet Cong would relocate, and it was kind of scary. So every time a tanker came up for refueling, they went to a different site. The F4s needed a gas, came in, got their gas, went home, and we were out there for another 2 or 3 hours. A couple of the crews after takeoff got their gas, so they go out and strike their targets, and they expend a tremendous amount of energy and burn a lot of fuel during their bomb strikes. And so shortly after their bomb strikes, they're empty again, and those boys can't make it back to their base without getting gas from us again. So that's a fairly rewarding job to be doing, and I'm glad that I was part of that. Anyway, thought that was a fun story. And again, that was at U-tapau. I was co-pilot in a KC-135, and it was a fun time. I don't want to do it again, but that was a fun time.